Okay, so in this video, I'm going to go through the solutions for the IB Economics Higher Level Paper 1. This is the October/November 2022 exam. This is Paper 1, which includes the essay style questions. I'm going to go over the solutions to Paper 2 and 3 in subsequent videos, but this is for Paper 1 only. So let's scroll down and we'll just have a look at the first question. Over here. So I'm going to do just the first question over here, which is asking us to explain why the existence of positive externalities of consumption would lead to allocative inefficiency and thus a welfare loss. Okay, so typically with these essay questions, they expect to see answers in a certain format. So these include key terms, diagrams, if applicable, some kind of theory and explanation, and maybe some sort of real-life example. So here I've already got sort of a bunch of key terms that I'm going to describe, and then down here I've got a section for a diagram, which I'm going to draw later on, and then section here for some theory and explanation, and also finally a little real-life example that I can think of. Okay, so let's go back to the first bit over here where we typically talk about sort of key terms. So first, let's define some important concepts. So when I look at this question, I see that they're asking us to talk about externalities, and they're talking about sort of allocative efficiency and also welfare loss. So we can see here we've got externalities, some sort of discussion on allocative efficiency as well as welfare loss, as well as these other related concepts of marginal, private, and social benefit, which we're going to discuss. Okay, so in terms of an externality, what exactly is an externality? These are spillover effects of an economic activity that affect third parties who are not directly involved in the activity. Externalities can be positive or negative. All right, so essentially externalities are these sort of things that, as I mentioned, it's kind of like a side effect, and it can affect other parties that are not directly involved. So these can either be good externalities or bad externalities. In the case of positive externalities, well, positive externalities occur when the consumption or production of a good or service benefits third parties, leading to a social benefit greater than the private benefit. And negative externality occur when the consumption or production imposes costs on third parties, leading to a social cost greater than the private cost. Okay, so now we've defined an externality. The other key term we're going to discuss is this idea of allocative efficiency. Now, allocative efficiency occurs when essentially resources are being used where they most benefit society, right? So this occurs when resources are distributed in a way that maximizes social welfare. In other words, the marginal social cost of production equals the marginal social benefit of consumption. Bit of a typo here. Yeah, so that's the definition of allocative efficiency. Next, we're going to define this idea of marginal private benefit. The benefit an individual or firm receives from consuming or producing one additional unit of a good or service. And then we're going to talk about the marginal social benefit, the total benefit to society from consuming or producing one additional unit of a good, which includes both private and external benefits. And lastly, we're going to talk about welfare loss. And this is kind of like related to this idea of deadweight loss. So this is the reduction in societal welfare due to market inefficiencies, such as underproduction or overproduction relative to this socially optimal level. Okay, so now we've kind of defined our key terms. This is kind of, I think this is a pretty good list of all the important terms that we're going to have to talk about. Next, I'm going to draw like a little diagram. So here with the diagram, the typical diagrams that we use for to depict this idea of externalities is, so we have our supply curve, which represents the marginal costs, and we have a demand curve, which in this case is going to represent the marginal private benefit, or MPB. And then we have this kind of idea of a marginal social benefit curve, which sits above the private demand curve. And obviously we're going to have price here on the vertical axis, and here we have something like the quantity of consumption on the horizontal axis. And if we leave it to the free market, we're going to end up at point A, which is, if we sort of go down to the amount of the quantity of consumption, we're going to have QE. We'll call that sort of the market equilibrium. And ideally where we want to be is at point B, which is over here, which we'll call this like QO or something for the socially optimal quantity. So if we kind of go down here, got the definitions of all the different points over here. So in a free market, decisions are made based on private benefits. So people will consume a good only up to the point where their marginal private benefit equals the price. This gives us the market equilibrium quantity, which we'll call QE. So over here. And but because of the positive externality, the marginal social benefit curve actually lies above the marginal private benefit curve, which is over here. In other words, society would benefit if people consumed more of this good than they do than they otherwise would in a free market. So in the market, consumption happens at QE, where the private benefit equals cost, but the socially optimal consumption, where the total benefit to society equals the cost, is QO, which is the socially optimal quantity, which is the higher level consumption. Now, if we keep going down, so next we have this section here on for theory and explanation. Since the sort of market produces and consumes less than the optimal quantity, we have underconsumption, which leads to this problem of allocative inefficiency, right? That means that society is not maximizing welfare because not enough of the good is being consumed. So, so we can say, in a market with positive externalities of consumption, just fix up the formatting. Individuals make consumption decisions based solely on their private benefits without considering the external benefits, the benefits to third parties. This means the marginal private benefit is lower than the marginal social benefit. Because consumers undervalue the total benefit to society, the quantity of the good produced and consumed will be less than the socially optimal quantity. In such a situation, the market equilibrium is inefficient because the good is underconsumed from the perspective of society. This leads to allocative inefficiency, as the resources are not being used to produce the socially optimal quantity of the good. So now, because of this underconsumption, there's a welfare loss. The area between the marginal private benefit and the marginal social benefit curves represents the welfare that society loses out because we aren't producing and consuming enough of this good. So economists will call this a deadweight loss, or an inefficiency that occurs when the market isn't operating at its socially optimal level. So we can, by the way, we can actually represent the deadweight loss as this triangular area over here in the diagram. I should probably have sketched this in before. So this little triangular area here, you might want to make a note of that, and you want to call that, let's say, DWL for deadweight loss, just to indicate that you understand that concept. The welfare loss occurs because there is a deadweight loss. Which is the loss of potential gains from trade due to underproduction. This difference between the socially optimal level of consumption and the market equilibrium level creates a triangle of inefficiency where society misses out on the additional welfare that could have been gained if more of the good were consumed. This is depicted by the triangular area in the diagram above. And lastly, we can finish off with an example. And one of the classic examples that are often used is this idea of education. So education is considered to be beneficial not just for yourself, but it's beneficial for society as well, because there are these sort of social benefits that, essentially when you get yourself an education, it's not just good for yourself, it's good for people around you as well. So what I would say to this is, when someone decides to pursue higher education, they primarily think about their private benefits, things like getting a better job, earning a higher salary, and improving their knowledge. These are captured by the marginal private benefit curve. Fix this up a little bit. However, there are also positive externalities associated with education. Society benefits when people are more educated. These benefits include higher productivity for the economy, better civic engagement, lower crime rates, greater innovation. These additional benefits to society are captured by the marginal social benefit curve, which lies above the MPB curve. Because individuals make decisions based on their private benefits, the free market equilibrium for education will occur at QM, where private benefit that should be not private benefit, private demand equals the price of education. But from society's perspective, the optimal level of education is higher at QO in the diagram, where the marginal social benefit equals the price. Since fewer people pursue education, that would be socially optimal, we end up with underconsumption where not enough people are getting educated. This creates a welfare loss, represented by the shaded area on the graph. To fix this, governments often intervene by subsidizing education. Subsidies such as student loans or free public schooling lower the cost of education, encouraging more people to pursue it. This helps shift consumption closer to the socially optimal level. Which we represent by QO, reducing the welfare loss and leading to better outcomes for society. And there you have it. So this is kind of like what I guess kind of like a textbook answer is going to look like. So as I mentioned before, if we go through all the different sections, typically what they like to see is they like to see a section for key terms, which we've now done. So we've defined all the important terms, things like externalities, allocative efficiency, etc. And we've also included a diagram, which they often like to see as well. And just got to make sure that the diagram's like properly labeled, and you've got all you've indicated where all the important bits are. And then we've got a section here to kind of explain the theory behind the concepts that we were talking about. And lastly, we finished off with a real-world example. Okay, so that's it for this first question in the IB paper. Next, I'm going to look at the second part, which is part B.